We are live. Greetings, all. It is February 23rd, 2025. We are joined by Chris Bagnell and then a couple of new faces. Joe is back. I wouldn't say his new face. He hasn't been around in a little while. He took a little break. And then Tyler with Unleashing DePIN is joining as well. One thing I wanted to say is we are going to start a regular X Spaces here pretty soon. I think we're targeting probably Thursdays to start doing a standing Spaces. That is going to be super exciting. We'll keep it pretty broad, just cover a plethora of DePIN projects, updates that are happening. But with that said, how's everybody doing?
Great.
Doing really well. Glad to be here with you guys.
Doing wonderful. Trying to get some notifications out there so we get some live viewers here.
Yeah, I say since we can now stream from here on X as well as YouTube, we've had pretty good turnout the last couple times.
Yeah.
So super exciting stuff. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to broader market conditions. Bobby's here. See who all interacts with us this evening. What are you guys' thoughts on this Bybit hack?
It's simple social engineering, you know. I think people. What's up, Retro Mike? 5 subs.
Once again, just case in point why you don't leave a significant amount of funds on a centralized exchange. And we don't know how this is going to play out if these exchanges have started to understand that, you know, you have to have insurance for these type of catastrophic events, like most financial institutions do. But if people need to wake up and realize that, start using self-custody wallets.
For sure.
Well, the hack was with hardware wallets, right? They changed the UI on one of the websites and basically, they signed this action.
I think it looked like a fairly sophisticated social engineering attack.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree. I think they said they keep like 60 to 70% of their assets in cold storage. I think they're trying to move it to a hot wallet. Well, they said a warm wallet. I think they're moving to a hot wallet. And I believe it was like a UI thing, and somehow the smart contract was like compromised, and they sent it to the wrong place apparently. So
it's so easy to modify a website and plug in a different address and send it to somewhere else. So they could have just mirrored a site. Like it's happened to me before. A lot of the DeFi stuff, like Baked Beans was one of them. There's a bunch of projects like that where you can connect your wallet. They can easily change the code on the site, and then they can change the address of the smart contract address. So a lot of people are saying now that Solidity, which is the coding language for Ethereum and a few others that are built on top of Ethereum, is obsolete and insecure. And it was only meant to be used for testing. And I think Solana and Cardano, it was another one. It's like they have their own coding language, which is built for security, and it has everything in mind so that this stuff doesn't happen.
I always have to ask, you know, who's the source of this information, because everyone takes an incident like this and spins it to their own agenda. And there's a lot of people who just don't know what they're talking about in crypto. But I'm curious to know, and I don't know enough about the details behind this hack, but what was the vector particularly, but it's easy to jump to conclusions and spew information that is inaccurate when the whole space does not understand the technicalities of this. So
sure,
we have Retro Mike. He always does very good explanations. He says they use Ledger and it had blind signing enabled, so they couldn't see the full message and just hit confirm without validating the full message they were signing. They really need to be using a hardware wallet with a full screen that shows everything, like Engrave. Okay.
I just don't think I think blind signing is something that should never be enabled. It's basically just so you can't see the transaction. The idea behind a hardware wallet is when you send something, it asks you multiple times. You have to confirm it in the interface on your computer, your phone, and then also through the wallet.
Yeah.
So with that much money.
Yeah, especially to say when you have $1.4 billion in ETH. I mean, what's crazy though is the market has stayed pretty resilient through it all.
ETH in particular, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like they had enough in their treasury. I guess they've taken out some loans too, but they've started buying back ETH. So it seems like they're going to make it through it, and that their market makers are stepping in to help out. So that's all good. But still, I mean, it's a big deal, and hopefully a learning experience for these different exchanges, because this is a big mistake. Obviously, I mean that's got to be pretty painful for them. And really, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we had the biggest liquidation event in crypto history. So we've had a rough last month. Have you guys stayed up on like the Argentina meme coin rug pull?
What a nightmare!
Yeah. The meme coin space has just been kind of a black eye to the whole crypto space. I mean, in one sense, I mean, if there's any silver lining, is it's brought a lot of new people in that have had to learn how to use phantom wallets. Like, I don't know how many of them have money left, but yeah, I mean, for the Argentinian president of a country to come in and rug pull people is not a good look. And now you've got Kanye talking about launching his coin. I'm not touching that. And I think sorry, go ahead, Chris.
There's just no like legal repercussions, it seems, right now. They need to be swift and fast with getting laws in place. I know that happens outside of the US, but you could still, regulations in the US I think would trickle throughout the whole world if it's like a good regulation. Like some of them can be crazy.
Yeah, there was an announcement this week that I believe they are putting a task force in place to start trying to track down some of these scammers. So that's good. I think we're finding like on these meme coins, I think we all knew to an extent that there was insider stuff happening, right? These big KOLs were in Telegram groups together. They were front running these launches. But I think it's a lot worse than even people realized. Some of these conversations are getting leaked now. And the meme coin space has just gotten super ugly. Like there's some pretty bad stuff that happened this week with all of it. So I think, I don't know what you all think, but I'm hopeful that we start getting a return to utility. I know in my X timeline, I'm seeing more and more, even the bigger accounts that are like, where are the utility? Like, where is it at? And I think it's DePIN's time to shine here pretty soon. So I think that's a good takeaway from all of this.
Yeah, it's like we've been here the whole time. You've been looking at the wrong thing, but I'm with you. I checked X the day after all of that kind of went down, and it was every celebrity crypto person out there talking about where's the utility, where are the good projects at. I was like, oh man, here we go again, right?
Yeah. And the good news though is, y'all, there's a lot happening in the DePIN space. The teams are still building. I've seen a lot of the project founders expressing frustration on X recently about the meme coins, and rightfully so. I mean, for these teams that are getting, in the office every day, grinding, building, to see, Fartcoin hit like a multi-billion-dollar market cap, and people getting rugged, and then obviously the media picks up the negative side of things, and it's got to be really frustrating. I know it's frustrating for me, and I'm sure you guys too, that we're looking for utility, investing in these projects, and then just haven't seen the price action follow. But I think we're going to turn a corner here pretty soon.
Yeah, I certainly think one of the reasons DePIN is overlooked, from someone who's all of us being on the inner circle of this particular space, the utility pitch sounds wonderful, and it seems like nobody else has this actual pitch, right? But we know there's a lot of projects out there that if you're the typical, you're the typical centralized exchange using investor, you're also trying to do your due diligence, but you're not getting very deep into it. And from every project's description, every website, every white paper that's put out, it sounds like these other ones have utility. Now, whether that's true or not, that's what takes many hours of research, and often needing a deeper background of blockchain understanding as well as tech understanding. So I don't think that it's necessarily that. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are drawn towards a get rich quick. We know that, but there's a lot of people who are trying to do this responsibly, and they get lost before they ever find the actual deep in space with all the other Web3 projects that sound like they have great utility and they have great backing with traditional finance or real world assets, etc.
Yeah. I was thinking about this a little earlier today, which is that the crypto aspect to DePIN is definitely a double-edged sword, and a blessing in the sense that it is a component to enabling these sort of new business models to be really, really awesome. But at the same time, it's sort of lumped in with this greater cesspool of problems that you have across the space. And like when I read white papers and whatnot of whether it's things like even back to the NFT days. Oh, the NFT has utility and it does this. It's like, no, okay. You're making stuff up at this point. Let's not kid ourselves here. And so I'm personally optimistic that I think people are getting really tired of everything that's happened. And so the barometer by which they judge what is actually quote unquote valuable should go up. And there's a real clear opportunity for this, for the DePIN space specifically, but
for sure. And the thing that we're going to have to start looking at more closely, because, when the attention turns back to DePIN, and we're already seeing a lot of these projects pop up, it's like, okay, how many of these projects have a path to drive demand? We know you can sell hardware and we know that you can build supply, but if you have no means to turn that supply into revenue, it doesn't matter. And I do think we're starting to see, though, with the token burns and revenue and partnerships come through. I think some of these projects are really going to shine, but it's also going to be really important to dig in and find the ones and kind of weed out the ones that don't have a path to revenue, because there are plenty of those as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Joe, what as far as like the broader economy and the things that are going on with interest rates, and then I'm curious what you guys think too about they're going to be going to see if the gold is in the reserves or not. Yeah. That's going to be interesting. That could be a very positive catalyst, or it could be actually really bad. If that gold is missing, I don't. That's not going to instill confidence in the U.S. dollar or the overall economy, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I saw either the gold is going to be there and the price of gold is going to go up, or the gold's not going to be there and the price of Bitcoin is going to go up. That's what I saw on X. I mean, that's just someone's opinion, but it could be possible. And I don't know. If it's not there, I feel like they wouldn't even show us, because they need time to actually get it there, because that's what our I mean, we've been told it's there forever.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of reports that there's a ton of gold that's being flown over from Europe right now, and I'm curious, is that people in the U.S. buying gold? Because I know a lot of people are buying gold, or are they trying to fill up the coffers ahead of this check that they're doing? And I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned. Like if it is missing. Yeah, maybe Bitcoin will go up, but I do believe we could see people are going to freak out.
Yeah.
So let's hope that it's there.
I think it has to be there. Like, there's not an option.
Yeah.
I'd agree with you, though. If it isn't there, I think it's going to unlock a whole, an unmeasurable amount of fear in the global economy, because it's like, well, if this is BS, and this is the U.S. government saying it's been here, like what else is sort of also BS? And so I think it could be a potentially really large catalyst in the wrong direction. I saw another comment on X as well that someone said, well, if it isn't there, then this might be the perfect opportunity to go forward and say, you know what, gold's antiquated. We're just going to launch the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and the U.S. is going to have the largest holdings. And then it's a moot point anyway. I think that's a little bit too optimistic. I doubt that would happen, but I don't think it's infeasible to assume that whatever does stem out of this gold audit, that, it might push a further drive to get Bitcoin on the balance sheet in a more significant way.
Yeah, I agree. I find it hard to believe that they would publicize this so much if they hadn't already gone and verified this. Because one thing we know about Trump is that he hinges his success as a president on the markets. And he knows, like, if the gold's not there, I think it's going to crush the markets. So I find it very hard to believe that they don't know what's there before they're publicizing this, but who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see. I also saw, have you guys seen the reports that they lost the keys to the Bitcoin that the U.S. has? Have you guys seen this?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that means it's safe.
I don't know if these are verified or not, but this in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. They're saying that because a lot of that's from Silk Road, right? Over 200,000 Bitcoin. Yeah, apparently, and who knows if this is accurate or not, but apparently they had the private keys stored on some spreadsheet, and now they're having trouble locating it. I'm like,
that's worse. I was expecting you to say they had it saved on a USB thumb drive and someone threw it out thinking we don't need these anymore, but that's even worse. They had it stored on an Excel sheet. Oh my God.
If that's true, that is so reckless. I mean, it's just crazy to think. Let's hope it's not true, but I'm sure we'll get more details about that. Speaking of the Bitcoin reserve, do you all think that it's coming?
Yeah. I remember they had the meeting with what's the guy? Who's the head guy?
David Sachs?
Yeah, David Sachs. And they mentioned that a lot of the people that they're waiting that are on the committee are still being sworn in. And I'm pretty sure we're at the end. I don't know if there's anyone else getting sworn in. I know the FBI director was this week. So maybe there's a couple more people. But I think everyone was really optimistic. We all kind of were bamboozled by Trump because kind of thought he was going to sign an executive order and get it done. But I don't think anyone's upset that they're doing it this way because they're not saying it's not going to happen, but they just want to make sure they do it right, which I think if you're going to go into a completely new space as the government, and a lot of people are skeptical about crypto, you need to do it right. You can't just sign an executive order and be like, this is what we're doing. I mean, you totally could, but I think they're doing it the right way. I don't know when it's going to happen. Is it going to happen this year? Or are they already secretly buying gold? I don't know. Brad, remember that chart you sent me, or Bitcoin, that chart you sent me of all the transactions that are now happening off chain, or not off chain. Geez, I keep
OTC.
Off exchanges. Yeah. So that's why the price of Bitcoin hasn't been going up, but you're seeing all of these companies, like Fortune 500 companies, buying millions of dollars in Bitcoin. The price should be 150 right now, easily. It's just not. They're doing private transactions, and I think Coinbase honestly has a lot to do with that because they're you saw the market manipulation with that bot that Binance and Coinbase is sending stuff to. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys?
My opinion is it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and I'm not I feel like I don't have as good of a grok on when that time frame will be because the initial press meeting that David Sachs had with all those other folks, it was basically an announcement to say we're going to have more announcements coming, and so that to me was a strong indicator that these might take longer time frames than a lot of us would hope. But at the same time, I think it's awfully coincidental that the outside of the Trump meme coin, his organization bought up a ton of crypto as a part of that sort of process. Yeah. And so I'm like, it seems like, I don't know. I don't want to suggest he's necessarily self-serving, but it was a very interesting timeline given that it happened right before he was sworn in. And so what does that tell you about what's coming? In my opinion, it's a strong leading indicator, an indicator that we'll get some strategic Bitcoin crypto reserve at the US. But
I agree.
Yeah, and I agree.
This is the chart that Chris was talking about. So this is the OTC balance, the desk balance. So it's moving down. So, because we've seen a lot of days where there's 10 times more Bitcoin being purchased than what's being mined. But they're depleting these OTC desks. So that's good. I mean, a lot of the buying hasn't really hit the price like it should. So once the OTC desk runs out, they're going to have to start market buying, and we're going to start seeing the supply shock get real here. But as far as the reserve goes, so going to that conference that you're talking about with David Sachs, the market didn't respond very favorably. I think people were hoping for a little bit more meat out of that conference.
It really wasn't much.
It was a lot of it was focused on regulation and stable coins, but there was something at the very end where they did ask, like very into the conference, about the Bitcoin reserve, and David Sachs said, yeah, it's one of the first things we're being tasked with looking at. So it's something we're looking at. We're waiting for the final appointments to take place. And it's something we'll be evaluating. So that's good. Glad that they did at least answer that question. So it sounds like it's going to be a value. It's just a matter of when is it going to happen. Have you all been keeping an eye on the different states that are introducing legislation?
That's another huge measure. I mean, what are we up to now? Over 20 states have introduced legislation for a state-based strategic Bitcoin reserve. 27.
There was one bill that got shot down, I think, in Ohio or Texas.
Yeah, a couple of them have been shot down. I think so. Up to 27 here. Looks like Utah. Let's see, I think I have it here. Yeah, Utah, I think is possibly going to be the first one. So you can see kind of where these states stand right now as far as getting it pushed through. Utah is getting pretty dang close. So that would be truly historic once the first state does, when that happens. And then I think once that happens, other states will start to follow suit, especially if the U.S., talking about the impact of if the U.S. Does pass a strategic reserve. And I talked about this in my macro update, but not only will other countries be, FOMOing in, but think about all the old money that's been sidelined that just like watches the media. They have an old financial advisor that doesn't understand Bitcoin, and they're like, oh yeah, all these scams, blah, blah, blah. If the U.S. passes a strategic reserve, all of a sudden that gives it a lot more validity, if you will. So I think you're going to see everybody's going to be asking their financial advisors, like, how do I get access or how do I get exposure? If you even see like 1% of people's retirement funds start moving into Bitcoin, I mean, we could see a massive surge on top of everything else. I mean, so I think it could be an exciting year, but it is a question of when that'll happen.
There's going to be,
I think, now that the crypto markets and builders and investors understand that there is going to be more regulation, particular regulation, giving that there's going to be, more government resources to contact about these type of ventures, and there is certainty within the legal boundaries. That's certainly a positive, but until it's actually on paper and signed, there's still a lot of gray area here. So I've seen, because of that, there's certain projects that are still waiting to do launches and major releases because of that, and I would assume some other economic factors.
Yeah, my general opinion on kind of what all of this signals is, whether it happens in the next month or sort of the next year, it's just the general trend in which the mass sort of market, whether at the governmental level or just general investors, is that this is something that is here to stay. I mean, I remember it wasn't there. I remember getting in arguments with people in like 2017, and a lot of people would say, "Oh, the government's going to come out and just outright ban all this stuff." I was like, "Well, that's probably not going to happen. It'd be a little bit difficult." But there was a lot of really public figures who were saying this thing's going to be completely illegal, and so to have such a turn in the zeitgeist to say, okay, now you've got half the country, or almost half a little over half the country, that have at least published or pushed a strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation in. Like, to me, it's just going in the right direction. So, oh, we lost Brad. He's like, you're wrong, and we're out. So,
no, I think it's interesting with
still are live. I think
the states are wanting to pass their own bills as well as the federal government. So that's just a lot of Bitcoin that they're going to be buying. And there's 50 states. It's just going to be a lot of money. So 50 states on top of the whole United States, plus every other country in the world. I don't understand how people don't see it. doesn't make sense. Like, are we being scammed? Like, are they all telling us to buy, and then they're gonna be like,
"Oh, there's still a lot of So you have to look at it from who has vested interests in the old system continuing as it is, and it's obviously the big banks of the world, and it looks like because of what's being proposed now, there's really no turning back. The writing's on the wall for them. So their next move is to play a major role in within crypto, and have a stranglehold on the ecosystem, which I'm sure there's lobbyists working day and night right now to get the bills brushed up to include clauses that benefit them as insiders, right? And that's just something I expect to happen.
Quantum
back to your other point, why do people generally not see this? It's a lot to take in for the average person, but you also have the old mainstream media, a lot of it's the agenda is dictated by boomers, and they're investors, and essentially what we would call the okay, I'm drawing a blank here. But what we call the establishment, right? That's what the media is portraying. This is, and at some point they're kind of forced to cover it when it comes to the financial channels and discuss Bitcoin. And I think we're getting that breakthrough of, okay, if the portfolio management company of your choice now offers some sort of Bitcoin investment, whether it be like 5% or 3% of your portfolio, most people are going to want to opt into that and play along, because it may be the most volatile asset, but it's also the best performing asset.
Yeah.
Brad said he got kicked.
Yeah, he said he's restarting his computer, so hopefully he'll be back soon. By the way, I saw a question come in from Network Bits. Any takes on Teleport deciding to shut down? You guys have any thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I made a video on it. I honestly, I think one of the reasons it didn't pan out was because they just didn't use Discord. I think I was talking to Brad about it with Teleport, Brad. Yeah, they just like every DePIN project uses Discord, and it's a good communication channel, and to kind of not allow that to be a thing, it got shot down immediately by the founder. I think that hurt them, because a lot of people don't like Telegram. I don't like Telegram. Like, I get scam messages on Telegram all the time. And yeah, Teleport totally seemed like a great idea. The whole idea behind it is just, it's cheaper for everybody. And Teleport, the company, is not taking as big of a cut as Uber does, because Uber takes a ridiculous fee and they end up giving the driver a small amount. But they you could do like simulated rides in the app and see how much it would cost, and it was like 1/3 the price. The driver got a lot of money, and then there was fees that were from the trip that went to a pool, if I understand, or if I remember correctly, just to keep the project going. But it's just, I think some projects are so good, but they just launch at the wrong time. Like, I know Uber in the very beginning had a lot of issues. They had a lot of lawsuits because of taxi drivers saying that they were taking their jobs and all this stuff, but it ended up panning out. I just think Teleport, I don't know. I think they should have kept going. I don't know how bad the financial situation was, though. Like, they could have been losing money for months.
It's a good question. I mean, all in all, there's certainly a market. It can be disrupted. I mean, Uber and Lyft own the market. They've gotten extremely greedy. They're taking like 60 to 70% of the fare. And I guess but you have to also remember, Uber operated at a massive loss for a long time to grab market share. And, for someone to disrupt that industry, they need to have, I think they're gonna have to have deep pockets, because there's a lot of aspects, like with Teleport, building out that app alone, I'm sure was expensive, and they never got all the details really ironed out there. But then it's a two-way marketplace, so you need to not only get drivers on board, but then there's a lot of marketing that's necessary so that you have enough riders to keep them busy. So it's very complex. So I think if for someone to really get in disrupt, they've got to have some serious financial backing. I would guess they burned through a lot of capital building out the app and everything, and weren't getting enough traction to keep investors and throwing money at them. So, but yeah, and launching at the right time is super important. Well, they never even launched a token, so they never even got to the point of launching a token.
I will say this about Uber and Lyft. They're having a lot of issues when it comes to driver payment and cost of rides. But with them being in direct competition in just about all the same places, you'd expect the market value to be competitive for what they're offering, right? But they have so much overhead as of right now when it comes to operational expenditures and their current their corporate headquarters force of employees. There's been some commentary about the amount that's been costing them, along with the research and development and additional offerings of services, like Uber Eats and other parts of the market that developing that has continued to require investment on their behalf. So I'm we give both sides the argument, but of course I think we're all in agreement that it's not really a fair situation for the drivers.
No. The Uber got a new CEO that came in, and they've become massively profitable now. But yeah, you're right. They have a ton of overhead. Actually, cabs are cheaper than Uber and Lyft in a lot of cases now, which is wild. And maybe that's dependent on where you are, but in Chicago at least. But they've gotten people so used to using the Uber and Lyft apps that no one's turning back to cabs. They can kind of charge wherever they want, and because it's a duopoly, they kind of feed off each other's prices.
Like gas stations on the corner.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that there's still people using cabs. I have to say I live far out enough from anywhere in the city or suburbs that it's a roll of the dice whether you're going to get an Uber or a Lyft on time out here, if you'd get one at all, if you don't pre-schedule. And if you pre-schedule, the chance of you getting someone to accept that 50-50. So I still use cabs. Most of my coworkers still use cabs when it's convenient. So I'm still optimistic there, but I get what you're saying. Certainly in the city, definitely it's almost Uber every time, unless there's a cab driving by.
I think it depends on the city. I know Uber is big in New York, I think, more than Lyft. I feel like I see more people Uber. But the interesting thing is I opened the Teleport app because they said that they're in major cities, and there was no drivers. So that could be that's probably the reason why they didn't pan out. There was just I know they started doing a couple rides. You had driver credit. I have like $15 in driver credit, but it's worth nothing because it's not a token. It's not like USDC or anything. I can't withdraw it.
Yeah, I actually got to use Teleport here during, was it Consensus? They had it in Austin last year, and so I got to take it to a couple places, and it was a good experience. But I think you guys hit the nail on the head with respect to the challenges there. I mean, not only does Uber and Lyft really own the market, but you need an exorbitant amount of money to be able to try to outcompete. And I think one of the other challenges is like whether it's related to the amount of sort of staffing and other infrastructure related to supporting the model, and or just the bootstrapping enough both supply and demand when you already have, I know Uber's not decentralized, but you sort of have this crowdsourced rideshare model. Uber was a 0 to 1 product compared to like the traditional taxi moment, but I'm not sure that just price is going to be enough to like get sufficient supply and demand in a way that allows you to outcompete or at least be viable compared to those other companies. And so I think there's just a multitude of reasons that made it unfeasible for them to continue operating. But I was excited. I at least got to say I did it because the promise was certainly interesting.
Yeah.
And I believe I wanted to kind of, discuss here, because I think this does. Sorry to cut you off, Chris. Did you want to?
No, you're good.
So I think it leads into this discussion overall about what we're seeing in the crypto market, and a lot of it has to do with the uncertainty of the general market. And I'm seeing this from both discussions from founders as well as established large corporations are both taking a different angle at this. But on Twitter and some of these podcasts, there's a lot of gripes about how much harder it is to be competitive in the startup space, or just to get by in a startup in general, as of these recent years, as compared to 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. Well, during COVID, so before COVID. So it's much harder for startups. And then from the corporate or big business perspective, it's become very much vogue these days, and to be cutting fat where they possibly can, and to be targeting the productivity issues and the waste issues within the company, which for big companies that certainly exists, but it's trendy right now amongst the C-level, and a lot of the discussion that you're hearing from business people on these podcasts. I know, I think you listen to the All In podcast, Brad. So that's what they discuss every episode just about. And I'm seeing that at my company, and I'm seeing that at many others, where it's all about what can they cut away that's wasteful when it comes to expenditures, and do they really need certain positions? Now, whether that's just it's following suit as to what other companies are doing to stay competitive, following suit to what the government is currently doing, and I think it's in preparation for some of the turbulence that we're going to see coming out of Doge. There's a lot of these programs that are getting cut. Now, I can give you my opinion on how I feel about this one way or another, but regardless, a lot of the programs that are being cut are certainly going to lead to less circulation of the currency throughout the economy, and that's going to will it slow inflation? Yes. But will it slow economic growth? Yes. So I should say potentially for both, but that's still going to impact the revenue streams of a lot of companies somehow or another. It's all intertwined. So I think a lot of companies right now are really buckling down for turbulence, and the economy in general is, any investors or any founders of these crypto ventures, or any company in general, is taking that same outlook. There's a lot of caution until we get past this period of all these budget cuts and potential for a trade war, and to see how Trump's tariff policies are going to play out is another big one here. Is it just a negotiations sort of tool that he's using, or is this going to be implemented in long-term policy, and to what extent is really what we need to what many people, many financial ventures need to understand prior to committing long-term to something of magnitude.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of it is the fact that, as and we see this, if interest rates are up, it's harder for these companies to get access to capital, so that you always see cutting of employees when you have in this type of interest rate environment. With Doge, look, if you look back at what Bill Clinton did when we had our last budget surplus, there's a lot of similarities. I'll say this much. I actually went back and watched a 2-hour clip of him and Al Gore, and they cut hundreds of thousands of government jobs, but they also were able to move a lot of that to the private sector. So that's the question here. Are they going to be able to, and I think a lot, and I don't know about all the government employees, but I think a lot of them are being given 8 months of pay. like kind of a parachute, if you will. So the question is, okay, can they now move some of this productivity to the private sector and create jobs there? I think they've been a little bit aggressive and heavy-handed in some of the cuts they're making. So at least from an optics standpoint, at the very least, it's one big difference. I say Bill Clinton was very articulate about what they were doing. I think this administration is taking certainly a different approach in how they're announcing some of these changes that doesn't sit well with people. And but what were you gonna say, Joe?
Well, two things, but you can finish your thought there.
No, yeah. So I think for me, it's like, okay, are they going to be able to stimulate the private sector enough that these people can find employment? Because one of the things we saw with the last administration, frankly, is that they were able to pad the job numbers a lot because they added a ton of government jobs. So this could backfire in the economy potentially. But if they are able to cut costs enough, and one of the things they're throwing around, and we'll see if this happens or not, is that the idea of 20% of Doge savings being sent out in checks to people. That would it'd be a political win. I think it would stimulate. We saw what happened when they sent out stimulus during COVID. I think a lot of that, we'd see a lot of money flowing into the stock market, into the crypto markets, but it wouldn't necessarily be good for inflation. But I think from a political win standpoint, a lot of the people that are up in arms about Doge, if they get a $5,000 check in the mail, they might change their tune. I don't know that it's the smartest thing to do, though, given that we're $36 trillion in debt.
Yeah, I get your standpoint on that. I mean, that there is certainly potential for inflation if you were to hand out that money. The counter argument to that is that if we have all this spending, the government spending on what is essentially like the U.S. aid, non-government organizations, a lot of these social welfare programs that are, potentially unnecessary, not the standard run-of-the-mill ones, but there's been a lot of added programs over the years from the federal government, and just the general cuts across the board in contract and defense spending, you name it. Point being is there's a lot less money now chasing goods and services within the economy because of these Doge cuts, which in theory would cause inflation to slow or come to a halt or potentially reverse, right? So if you were to distribute that money amongst everyone, then that would be more money chasing the same amount or less goods, which would be cause a rise of inflation. So it could potentially cancel each other out here. And another one of the arguments that I see being made here, which I take with a grain of salt, but there is, I guess, some logic to it. These checks, these potentially $5,000 checks, I don't think they've decided on the number exactly. It depends on how much to save, but it's only going to go to people who have paid into the system when it comes to income tax, not the ones who have their so many write-offs and tax breaks that they are neutral or actually get more back from the system than they pay in when it comes to federal income taxes. So it's not going to go to people who are on government benefits. It's not going to go to people who are working jobs that are at minimum wage or just above minimum wage and get tax credits for children and social programs from the government to help them get by. It's going to go to what are generally working class or above people, and they'll say that's going to go to them paying off their debt, them having to buy whatever it may have been that they've skipped out on for months and saving that money, etc. So nobody really knows, but we'll see how that plays out.
I don't know if you guys have seen the Doge website they finally posted the savings tab, which shows all of their pretty much all of the stuff that they've done, how much they've saved. You can see the contracts and the savings, but it's pretty neat. I can go to like one of these and view it on the federal website if this one loads. But this one loaded, and it's they saved a lot of money. I mean, they estimated they saved $55 billion so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say that I like Doge, I like Trump and Elon, but let's be real, they're playing fast and loose with a lot of numbers and verbiage here. So yes, I think this stuff is necessary, but they're getting pretty wild, and I'm not sure I necessarily believe all these figures. I'm glad that we're cutting a lot of this away.
Yes.
And there's another point I wanted to make that, Brad, you referenced Bill Clinton and his spending cuts and cuts to the government. And there's many administrations before that who did similar. And, yes, this isn't necessarily anything new. The problem is far and beyond what it ever was in the 90s. And I wasn't old enough to understand, or to see it for myself, what the reaction there was. But from how I understood the Clinton administration, that's when Newt Gingrich and the Republicans during that time, they took control of the House pretty significantly for the first time in many years. And there was certainly a shift in the overall sentiment amongst all Americans when it came to policy. And Bill Clinton knew that, we have to come to the middle a little bit and try to barter, make everyone happy and feel that the government's doing what's in their best interest. So the agenda of not only the Republican Party, but the Democrat Party as well, was to make government more efficient. And they were somewhat on the same page there. Now, when it comes to the political landscape these days, it's like completely different. And the way the media is portraying a lot of this, also once again playing loose with any sort of facts, numbers, and verbiage. Their agenda is to keep the gravy train rolling and to oppose Trump at every turn. So we're getting, even though it's been done throughout many administrations, we're being told otherwise if we're listening to the mainstream media.
What do you guys think the likelihood is that they actually start putting a lot of the government, not the efficiency stuff, but just sort of government spending and where all the money's going on chain? I know it's been talked about a little bit. Do you think that's low likely, highly likely?
Maybe eventually, but not anytime soon, I don't think. But it would be great, I think, to hold people accountable. But there's also, you have to think, though, some of this stuff that the line items they have, who knows? It could be, especially when it comes to Pentagon, who knows what some of that funding is going to, that they don't want to have exposed, that maybe is a national security thing too. So there is always that issue of putting all spending on chain.
Well, you're exactly right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I say what you're going to say, and then I want to talk about what
So when you hear a lot of the commentary around these U.S. aid cuts and the NGOs, and we're saying, why are some of these grants that the government's given out to foreign countries, many of them in the third world, like labeled the most ridiculous and in most cases far left political agenda, social political agenda items? Say, like, what is this? Why is this happening? And you're hearing some, I don't know how you would want to describe it, but a lot of people are kind of being forced to say, this is not necessarily what it's titled. We kind of have to pay off certain governments to allow us to operate within their jurisdiction. And yes, are there reasons for that the United States needs to pay these people off or pay a country off so we can run whatever base or operation or whatever strategic interest we have in that country, we have to pay them off. Yes, sure, but you know, that's now what the excuse is for a lot of this, and it's I think just the way it's been gone about is totally unacceptable, and it's allowed this to fester into an issue that is like it's like cancer when you remove it.
Well,
it sucks for everyone, and you really don't know what the impact is going to be, how much you can scrape away without, without hurting the country's interests abroad or, in house. But it has to be done, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, I think there's certain parts of the government that should be on blockchain and certain parts that shouldn't yet. But like Social Security and welfare, like being able to track that stuff and see, there was apparently people that are over 140 years old, like a lot of people. And they always say, I've been hearing it since I could remember in school, that there would not be Social Security for me when I grow up, but I still have to have money taken out of my paycheck. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And no one really actually has tried to fix it. And it's been 20 years since I started hearing that, like 5 years old in preschool. But that matters to a lot of people. I don't think like people understand that there's national security concerns. I mean, I would hope so. But I do think that some parts of the government would benefit from crypto. Some parts need to be old school. Like they just need to.
Yeah. I think, this doomsday guys in the comments here, I do believe that we will have a reckoning at some point. Like it's been since 2008, since we had a major recession. We basically just printed our way out of not having one. Yeah. I think we shut down our economy in 2020 where there's basically no productivity. We had a flash crash, but it rebounded immediately because we just printed money. And so that's the real question I have is like, okay, yeah, these government layoffs, if they're paying them for 8 months, they're kind of kicking the can down the road there. If they send out this check, they're kind of kicking the can down the road there. And then the other thing I want to show you guys is the M2 money supply, which is always interesting to look at. It's back on the rise. So again, kicking the can down the road, and you see what China's doing. China's been in a really bad situation with their real estate. Like, look at their money supply this last week. Like they're printing, man. Like, so
doubled it.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, we can keep kicking the can down the road, but at some point, I do believe we are going to have a little bit of a reset. It's just a question of when is it going to happen, and are they going to, print our way out of it to kick the can down the road further, which it looks like that is likely going to happen. And if they're paying these people for 8 months, then these government layoffs won't hit immediately. One other thing I'll say that I was reading about with inflation, a big portion of that calculation is rent. And when you look at new leases, the price on new leases has come down substantially, and it generally takes like 9 months for that to really figure into the numbers. But that is some silver lining, that if rent prices are coming down on new leases, it could help the CPI numbers. And Jerome Powell did hint at potentially lowering rates as soon as the summer. We'll see if that happens. But that would certainly be a good thing. But I still am under the belief that at some point we're going to have to pay for all this. This is much different from the 90s when, when I was watching those videos, Bill Clinton was like freaking out about, a few $1 billion in interest. Right now we have $1 trillion a year in interest payments. That's roughly 25% of our tax revenue is going to interest payments. That's not
the third largest, isn't it?
What's that?
It's like the third largest spending category is just on interest payments, right?
Yeah. It's right up with our defense budget. You remember when we used to complain about surpassing 10 trillion, and within a little bit over a decade, here we are at 30 trillion.
36,
it's just absolutely outrageous that this was allowed to go on. And we're going to pay for it, as well as our children and potentially our grandchildren, if we don't get a wrap around it. And this could be, it could severely impact the dollar if worst case scenario.
The good news here is that every other country had to do the same thing during COVID, just not at the same magnitude that we have. But you're seeing what China's doing. Everybody's kind of having to print their way out, and everyone's economies are in kind of rough shape right now. I mean, you look at the U.S. and it's like spending, has stayed strong, but the amount of credit card debt is out of control right now. I mean, it's like $2 trillion in credit card debt. And when you look at people that are making minimum payments and defaulting on their credit cards right now, that's going through the roof right now too. So, so that party can't go on forever. So
whatever happened to that credit card? Trump wanted to max the interest at 10%. We haven't really heard anything about that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. A lot of what he is asking for is going to have to be through
congressional
Congress
approval.
And yeah, I don't foresee a lot of it happening. Behind closed doors, I'm sure there's plenty of Republicans telling him, "Look, you're taking this too far. It's not going to happen." And what are you going to do? Primary the whole party? Trump has a lot of leverage right now in the Republican Party. I mean, there's not been
trifecta.
Many. I don't think there's been a president with such a grasp. I mean, maybe, but but I think there are still limits to what he can do, because look, a lot of the party is still subject to donors and the typical swampy establishment. And
sure.
What was the other thing here? Yeah, the other issue, one of the things we've seen like throughout 2008 and after it is all the regulations around how these financial institutions are supposed to operate and how much they're supposed to have in reserve. And with that, the credit being just people's personal lines of credit being maxed out, the defaults we're seeing, and how a lot of people's who have savings is starting to dwindle, and they're having to dip into it. That is a significant concern, because if there is an event, I forget the exact term of it, but it's there's a significant amount of liquidity that is needed to be pulled back, and that further triggers that institution trying to grab hold of whatever outstanding funds they have. They pull that back, so it continues this repeating cycle. That's not. There's an actual financial term for it, and
black swan.
Regardless of all this stress testing that and the reporting and regulation that's in place, I don't think that how far we've gotten down this rabbit hole, that if that event was to occur, it's going to be all the money is going to be there, and we're not going to see. Look, there's plenty of banks that still collapse because they become what's the term for it?
Yeah,
insolvent.
Yeah, insolvent. Yeah.
I'm curious with if thinking of some of these concerning potentials, like for the DePIN sector, like what impact or risks do you think this brings to that space in particular?
So, okay, that's a good question. Yeah, let's start rotating this into the DePIN side now. So I think my thought is that they're going to turn on the money printers. They're going to try to lower rates. I think these layoffs are going to be kicked down the road a little bit as far as having their impact, because they're going to pay people for 8 months or whatever. So I think we could still this year see a big run up here. I personally think so. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, so I believe we could see DePIN projects do pretty well. Now, to answer your question, we saw helium, right? It survived the bear market. I think it's going to really depend on how many of these projects are actually have demand, because in a bear market, you lose a lot of the speculative buying. So you need to have some buying pressure on the token. And if you have true utility and you have revenue that's leading to token buys, I think those projects can still survive through. But the ones that are just selling hardware, they're going to fizzle out, man, because no one's going to participate if the tokens drop, price drops too much. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it playing out.
Yeah, I think 2025 is the year of demand side validation. Like we've validated the supply side can work through the last couple of years, and now it's really what is the barometer for demand side success, and then what happens to the rest of the projects that are haven't crossed that chasm yet. Do they just continue to be a zombie coin? Do they fizzle out altogether?
Yeah, it also depends on how passive the participation process is too. I mean, with Helium, we saw like people set up IoT hotspots. They weren't maybe going out and making sure they were up and running if they went down, but the ones that were up and running, people just left, right? Because it doesn't require any interaction. For projects that require a fair amount of interaction from the contributor, it's harder to keep them engaged, especially in a bear market. So I think the more passive the project, the better, probably.
That's a good question by Mr. Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I agree.
The vast majority is the answer.
What percentage of DePIN projects are just overpriced commodity hardware with no real demand?
A lot of them. It's a hard.
Yeah,
it's a
the
hard
vast majority.
It's a hard question to answer because there's so many DePIN projects now. So the percentage is hard to really calculate. We've seen so many pop up, but I'd say there's a lot of them for sure.
Now, what about?
Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, what about a project that? So, like, take Crank for example, because they wanted to launch their own miner. What they ended up doing was using Helium's already hundreds of thousands of miners and developing software. So they never really developed any hardware, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
How would you think about that? I mean,
I like the idea of being able to use commodity hardware when you can. I mean, that's ideal. Yeah. It's not always ideal for certain quality assurance mechanisms, for certain anti-gamification mechanisms. But if you're going to produce your own hardware, I judge you on the reason that it's required and the quality of it. And I'm seeing a lot of these projects that are manufacturing cheap hardware or reselling cheap hardware from knockoff brands, putting their sticker on it and marking up the price.
Yes.
And that is my confidence in that is very little. That's a showing sign that this is not serious.
Yeah.
If they had, if there's some that I get it if they want to have better quality control of data collection or whatever. But the question I always have is, okay, are they just selling at very little profit, and are they pushing prices down as they have economics of scale, or are they trying to really profit on that equipment? Because the projects that Demo is a good example, right? They've continued to they launched a new version of their product, but they've continued to push pricing down. I don't believe that they're making a whole lot of profit on their equipment. I think for them, you have to cover enough to be able to replace products if you have warranty claims, etc. But the goal should really be to get your equipment, your hardware in people's hands, and the profit should come from the true utility of the project. It shouldn't be the vast majority of your profit shouldn't be coming from hardware profit. In my opinion.
Well, they sell license fees, which for a lot of companies, I'll let you go, Joe.
Yeah, my thoughts on this is that there's not going to be many projects, if any at all, that you just set up and there's no barrier to entry and you make money off the network. Those days are over, unless you're doing a proof of work type of chain, which I haven't heard of any really promising proof of work chains that everyone's excited for these days. But there's going to be some sort of payment for the network that you're using, which is essentially covering the salaries of the developers and leadership of this. And I'm fine with that. And I'm also fine, let's say you can use commodity hardware for whatever your project is. You can use some a Raspberry Pi, or you can build out your own server, computer, whatever. and that's an onboard. But the company wants to sell hardware. I'm fine with that, because as long as they're selling good hardware, because there's a lot of people who just don't have the technical ability or patience to go the do-it-yourself route, and it's in many cases it's just too complex for the ordinary person, and they want something that they can set up and onboard with ease. That's fine, that's good. But when I see that, there's a lot of hype around a project, and I already said the point, they just sell something that is not impressive to the point where they're trying to actively hide the specs on their website, then that lets me know that it's, this is a hustle, a hardware hustle.
Or they show so many specs like RoboFi where you're like, what the hell am I looking at?
Which projects are you guys like excited about that you think are doing things the right way right now? Like curious what your thoughts are there, the ones that you think will thrive in this market cycle.
I like Wayru and what they're doing. They just started their the reward tier system. They're still in testnet, but basically now you can't just have like 12 hotspots in a closet. Now it's based on connectivity, which is nice. And it's kind of going off of what Joe said. What he likes is that they offer their own device, or you could bring your own device. What's Joe say? You're muted, Joe.
We can talk about that. I mean, I've given them enough of headaches over the past couple months, especially my last show there. But yeah, I've heard good things about Wayru from people who are working with them, and the path forward. And I'm seeing that they're starting to support some of the better enterprise hardware, or at least have a path to doing so on their website. But I did complain about a lot of the hardware that they support for just do-it-yourself onboarding as being over a decade old. I mean, if you can buy off Amazon or eBay and it costs the same amount or less to get that hardware than it does to onboard on the chain, and it's like, why are we supporting hardware that is 3 revisions behind the current standard? I bought for do-it-yourself.
I bought 5 of these TP-Link routers for, I think all in it was like $150 or $200, and it was cheaper than buying the one Genesis, and then I could onboard them. So I agree with the outdated hardware. I think they're doing better. They needed somebody like you to say something.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the hardware that they support right now, and I've looked at this before, so I'm fairly certain that it's one of those things where you're not getting the exact specs that you expect to see for a wireless access point, and even what's listed is not entirely impressive on its face. Now, look, sorry, I know some people don't want to hear that, but from my perspective, I'm trying to be understanding about it. I know I work in the industry, but come on. Other than that, I've heard of good things that they're doing. Another project much similar is Carrier One, and this is one we've been watching for a while. And they've pivoted towards the Wi-Fi offload, similar to what Helium Mobile and XNet and Wayru are doing. And I really like the hardware that they actually gave away, like $50,000 worth of hardware to, I think it was 300 people for a contest. So if I recall correctly, those specs were pretty good. It was a good brand, and they're I don't like the idea of being on was it SUI blockchain?
Yeah.
I believe that's what they're on, a SUI. Who uses that? Look, this is going. Whatever you want to say about Solana, okay, we'll get to it right away. But at the end of the day, what is every single DePIN project saying? We had to move to Solana for particularly liquidity, the liquidity markets for the overall ecosystem support that is there, and for the ecosystem interaction.
Phantom has it locked
There's
in.
plenty of blockchains that fit the bill for many things. When it comes to a technical standpoint, sure, you can get your massive grant for building on it from that blockchain, but there's still issues when there's not an ecosystem big enough there for you to really get development resource support, for you to get just a general support of the outer community, and get listed on centralized exchanges, have your own miners cash out. All right, end of rant.
What do you guys think about Daba? Tyler, I know you're pretty familiar with Daba Network, right?
Yeah, I bought quite a few hotspots. I really like what they're doing. I've definitely started to put a sort of a higher value on projects that either bring existing demand side validation, or they're like they've proven it using kind of the DePIN model as an accelerator for that. And I think Daba is a really great example of someone that like has a path to making the network succeed. And then just from a community or sort of an engagement standpoint, I love that they actually go and set the units for us. That to me takes off such a layer of hassle or just work that is involved with other projects. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but I just know for myself personally, I've got a higher interest in buying hardware that I don't need to go out and set up myself. So
yeah.
But I like it. What about you? What are your thoughts?
I agree, man. So for me, when I was looking at DY projects in general, I mean, being from the US, it's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around the business case because it's so accessible, and it's same with like Europe. But digging into what Daba's doing, they're building out a very efficient network, because they have at the local level, they have the LCOs, local cable operators, that do the installs. They also have backing from the Indian government. They actually help draft the telecom policy, and they're only installing these where they have subscribers. So all installations will be getting usage and driving revenue right away. And they're in season 2 right now. I put out my video like 2 weeks ago, and they were at 5,000 units sold. So they've sold 5,000 units in the last 2 weeks. So 1.4 billion people in India. 70% of their population is under the age of 35. Only 5% have access to broadband. So there's a massive need. They don't even have to have a large percentage of the total addressable market to be very successful.
Yeah.
And then they have some laser technology that they've created their own now, but originally they worked with Google on it. But for bringing the internet from the edge of the cities and towns into the city, they're using point-to-point laser technology that's going to bring down the cost drastically. So I think Daba's set up to do really well, actually. So I'm very excited about it. I also have purchased quite a few hotspots. They're open till the end of February, even though they're oversubscribed and they beat their goal. They're going to keep it open for another week on season 2. And you're in Genesis tokens. They're launching on Solana, and the TGE should be probably, I would imagine, at the end of Q1 is what they're saying.
Yeah, one of the comments that someone said is my only issue with Daba is it's too easy. You don't own any of the hardware. You don't put any of the work building the network. You're just trusting that someone else doing that for you. I do think that is a valid comment for what it's worth. I mean, I think there's different types of buyers, and I have a hunch, or I believe that there will be. I coined the term. I keep using it. It's the sort of delegated DePIN. I think there'll be delegated DePIN models that pop up for other projects in the space to take that level of friction off the top. But I don't think that you can have just a binary, everybody has to deploy it or everybody has to, rely on a central provider. I think you should have some optionality. And then if you do provide optionality, I know one of the challenges with the wireless space is like really ensuring quality of deployments. And there's a multitude of factors that sort of go into that. And so if you do allow people, something like self-custodying, like just, put the right parameters in place. And I think there's I don't know if there's sufficient data now with all these different DUI projects out there of how to do that right, but I think we've got a way better understanding of what parameters you should and maybe shouldn't put in place to at least have a 80% chance of success by letting people do it themselves. Joe might have a different opinion than me on that one, but
it fixes the problem of oversaturation and getting coverage in areas where you don't need it. It helps with the efficiency. I agree though, like, so the LCOs, they've slow rolled this to start with, right? They brought in a handful of LCOs that they have very close working relationships with that they've vetted very extensively. The LCOs do get a percentage of the tokens, so for them to get paid out, they have to hold up their end of the bargain. They have to keep the hotspot up and running. If they don't, then they can get kicked out of the program, and they'll set you up with a different LCO to maintain it for you. So they've got a huge backlog of LCOs wanting to join, as well as subscribers. So they have both ends of the spectrum, and now they've sold out season 2. So I think they have all the pieces in place. We'll see how it plays out in real time, but I think it's definitely a good concept.
There's 2 projects I want to touch on if you guys are good with that. One, Sword Chain. Someone left a comment. Horrible launch, last-minute rush decisions to capture the height of the bull market, causing users to get confused because of faulty hardware and lack of support. And now they're pivoting into hype AI when the project isn't even clear on its initial goals of being a drive-to-earn type demo challenger. I think that's pretty fair. I know when I got the device, I actually made a video on how to set up the device, and it was more of like it was just I couldn't get it set up. I mean, I finished the video and I didn't even get the device set up. It didn't work. I think there's some projects that will come up like that where, I mean, Sword Chain, like they are still around. Like it's not like it was a rug pull. They are trying to do useful stuff, but they're a direct competitor to Demo. You can't convince me otherwise. And Demo is doing, like, they built it all out already. So I understand the reason to have a competitor. It makes Demo want to be better. It's good to have competitors, but I just think they struck short on that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on.
I agree. I've stayed clear of Sword Chain myself. I think at the beginning, I don't know if it's still this way, but I believe you had to like connect your phone to the device. And to me, that was like, that was a non-starter for me. I was like, okay, if Demo's going head to head with them and they already have cellular connectivity built into their devices and completely passive, then I tend to choose who I think is going to be the winner in each one, and I stick to that unless something drastically changes. So like with Demo, I've met the team personally. I've seen them at different events. They're super sharp. And then if we look at what's going on with their project right now, like the price action sucked, but like 166,000 vehicles connected. You look down at their developer licenses, they're now up over 200 developer licenses, 211 now. They just passed 200 this week. So there's people building, and their token burns have started now from revenue. So they've burned 1.6 million. This just started. So like for me, this is who I have selected, who I think is going to win out in this space. Not to say there can't be multiple players, but I've gone Demo all the way, and their team is legit, man. Like they are building, and they're smart.
They're hard workers.
Yeah. So for me, I kind of faded Sword Chain. Not to say they can't be successful, but yeah.
I've had that device in my drawer since I bought it. After I tried to set it up, it's just not worth the effort.
Yeah.
Any of you guys got thoughts on it, Joe, Tyler?
I don't have as many insights.
Participated in either.
Yeah, I'm a Demo user. I'm kind of agree with what Brad said. You know, I'm really bullish on Demo as a project, Demo as a team in particular. I think they are like real executors who have demonstrated that across the different kind of challenges that persist within these DePIN networks. But I don't have a ton of firsthand data on
right.
Sword Chain.
This is a valid point. Someone said that more than half their developer license are people playing with the API. That might be true. And even still, let's say half are. If there are 100 people building useful applications, I mean that's way more utility than most DePIN projects right now. And I mean we're still in the early stages here as far as building goes. And you know with this DIP that they passed for these developers to get access to the vehicle data. Now they have to pay per vehicle. So that's where we're starting to see these demo burns. So I think now that just in the last 2 weeks, we're seeing the token burn. We're seeing real utility drive, purchases, buying pressure on the token. I think things look good moving forward, in my opinion.
All right, there's actually 2 more projects because I just saw another comment. Do you want to do Hive Mapper or World Mobile first? Which one do you guys want to talk about? I'll start with Hive Mapper.
Do World Mobile because I think that one will be shorter. I'm going to use a washroom real quick.
All right,
but keep going.
Oh, Joe's leaving right when the questions come that he was supposed to answer, right?
Yeah, I was a little confused about this. Brad, it's like everyone messaged me at the same time. Brad messaged me, and then people in my Discord server. I think I got something on X all at this like the same day within the same hour. Like, what is going on with this?
Yeah.
So, Brad, do you care to, or Tyler, do you guys want to?
Tyler, have you spoken with the World Mobile team at all? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, we tried to organize doing a podcast about a year and a half ago that never materialized. And then I was at I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Jeff Pulver. He's sort of coined the father of VoIP. Anyway, he hosts this event every year called VonCon. And so when I was there, I was in Mountain View last year about this time. And so I actually met I think he was the CTO of World Mobile, and he and I spent quite a bit of time chatting about what they're building. I think there's definitely aspects to it that are compelling, whether it's through some of the license spectrum that they own that could be leveraged and monetized in various ways. They obviously have a global focus on what they're trying to do. The one thing that was a little bit interesting to me was that they just rolled out their direct to consumer plans that were quite expensive. I think they started at $60 or $70 in the US, which to me, I'm struggling to see how that's going to be competitive. I mean, that's like a full price T-Mobile plan. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that changes. I do think so those are just a couple of my initial thoughts, but what are your thoughts on the matter?
Look, I haven't looked too far into it. I've had a lot of people in my comments on my videos telling me to check it out. I did dig in a little bit this last week. Like, it does look like when North Carolina had their issues, they worked in conjunction with what's Elon's Starlink. Yeah. So what's unclear to me, they've posted a lot about deployments with Starlink. What's unclear to me is whether there's an actual partnership there. Now, one of the responses I got on X was, well, they had a Starlink employee that was helping them deploy in North Carolina, so it can be assumed that they have an official partnership. The problem I have is because I've looked, there's other projects that are talking about using Starlink and then sharing that broadband or sharing that connection. I've looked at the terms and conditions of Starlink, and like that is, unless you have complete consent from Starlink, like they can cut you off for doing that. So my question is, do they actually have a real partnership with Starlink, or are they just kind of, using it now and then that's a potential risk? I don't know.
That's a great point, but that pretty much goes across the board for any type of connectivity through an ISP, whether it's a residential or business line. Even if it's business, it still has to, like, for example, if it's running into a hotel, there still has to be a clause in there. There still should be a clause in there that it's for resale, that it's for general connectivity, because there are laws and regulations about how people use that, and the ISP has to plan for that capacity. But yes, that's a very valid point.
That was always concerned for Helium with me. With IoT, it didn't use that much data to where it was going to get flagged. Now, some ISPs did start cutting off Helium, though, like smaller ones. But it was always concerned. That's one thing I like about DABA, by the way, is that DABA has the backing from the Indian government. So, like, that's not an issue for them or a potential risk. That's one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on that project. But I don't know. So not to FUD World Mobile, there's a lot of people that really like that project. I just have not taken the time to really dive in. And I don't know the team. For me, it's really, really important to connect with the teams and have a call with them to understand if they're not only capable but committed in what they're doing, and that there's no shady business going on, like, because there's a lot of that in crypto. So that's just based on very preliminary research on my end.
Yeah.
And then Simon Wayfi is writing, CBRS and private cellular is way too early, still too many unknowns. What is known that to do it right, the costs are way too high. Bullish long-term, stay away in less than 5 to 10 year time frame. And I mostly share that same opinion, and I try to judge a lot of this based on what's taking place in the private enterprise space with whoever's using it outside of crypto, right? And you look at those trends and the demand there, and it's still really, it's still early in the game, especially for private cellular. But there's still a lot of hurdles. There's still a lot of developments that need to take place when it comes to standard operating procedures from a technical perspective, how phones treat certain during certain functions, how they implement that, and how the carriers or the operators handle that from a protocol level as well. So it could be something significant. I don't want to write it off. I'm always a little bit bearish when it comes to deploying infrastructure that costs that much money, has that many requirements, and needs technical expertise. But that's also a barrier to entry that keeps away a lot of the amateur, the amateur execution that is so prevalent when you have cheap devices that are just so readily and easily available. So we'll see how that plays out. They seem to be, from what I've heard, a pretty serious team.
What are your thoughts? I know, because on XNet, okay, because I've had some people reach out about that just recently. I haven't taken the time to really look into it. Chris and I got accused of fudding the project last week on our live stream. But Joe, what are your thoughts on it? And Tyler, I'm curious if you have thoughts on XNet as well.
I'm thoroughly disgusted, and I'll leave it at that. I am so appalled, disappointed. I am enraged as to the way so many things went down there. So
okay,
I don't recommend it, and I'm going to leave it at that.
All right, Tyler, you have any thoughts on XNet?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different opinion than Joe. I haven't had some of the maybe the bad taste in my mouth from these different experiences. I think there's a couple things that I like about it. Number one, some of the hardware choices that they've gone with. I think the fact that they have, they were able to negotiate a deal with AT&T, if not beneficial for XNet, it's going to be helpful in paving kind of the future for making those relationships easier for other projects. I don't necessarily know for other other MNOs, but at least with AT&T, and hopefully it'll make the space a little bit more competitive. I think Rich has got a clear vision on what they want to build and kind of the path to get there. They've definitely taken some. I think everybody in the DY space got the CBRS thing wrong, and there just wasn't sufficient data, or maybe there was. I don't know if I necessarily have enough information there, and so they're really doubling down on kind of the Wi-Fi angle, which I think is the right approach, and then through brownfield conversions as well. So I probably have a slightly different opinion than Joe, but that's okay. That's what we're here for.
That's good, man. Yeah, that's why we're on.
I'm just wondering when they're I'm wondering when they're going to release some sort of user dashboard for managing your onboarded hardware, when they're going to release some sort of and for the general user, if there's going to be an app, like, when's that coming? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I hope it does happen soon. I will say, like, if you're looking at some of the data to judge potential viability, they have recently had quite the major uptick in data passed through the network. So, if that's all paid or not, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they're over, what was the number? Like a terabyte. It was a significant amount of data that they were passing. So I feel like from a kind of a fundamental basis, that's promising. And I know that they've talked about sort of incentivized zones that telcos specifically are wanting to have coverage in. So from those standpoints, I feel like if you're someone that wants to go get hardware and set it up and deploy, like there could be a lot of good opportunity, and hopefully there'll be some sustainability with the ZIP 11 that's been proposed to fix some of the tokenomics that happened as kind of a result of the migration and other things. So I'm excited to see how that plays out too.
Yeah, that was one of the things when I first looked at it, why I faded it, it was the tokenomics. And this was a while, I mean, it's like a year and a half ago when I looked at it, and the tokenomics are some red flags to me. But I had some comments that said that's been addressed. So in fairness, I have not looked at it in quite a while. Helium. What are you guys' thoughts on Helium? This was some news this week that they have a new partnership that is bringing 2.3 million subscribers to Helium. That would certainly be a big deal. But what are your I know Joe has quite a history with Helium. I'm curious what everyone else thinks about Helium, what they're doing right now.
Well, Joe, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Joe.
I've been trying to keep up on what's going on with Helium, and I've provided some of my time to help them with this, but yeah, there's I think that's good overall. That's one announcement that I need to clarify particularly, but I think that's for Wi-Fi offload in Mexico, if I remember correctly, hearing on the mobile working group call. So that's all good. It's another partnership that further brings use of the network, and they're also seeing they're getting a lot of traction in the Wi-Fi offload space as well. There's a lot of people that are making a significant amount of crypto earnings and just moving data because it's set up in business areas where the offload for different major cellular carriers is taking place by approval. So it's all good. There's a lot of details around when it comes to they call brownfield onboardings or conversions, and like bringing on a business existing network, how you do that, and you go through for that to be carrier offload eligible. Aside from, so let me back up a little bit. If you buy one of their manufactured hotspots with a Helium, it's a wireless access point, but they call it hotspot. It has a Helium sticker on it, and there is some internal code for certain functionality on chain and validation checks. That is just that's eligible to be placed in a business location and be reviewed for carrier offload, such as AT&T, T-Mobile, Google Fi, Cricket, so on. Now, when it comes to data only, or otherwise, like you want to use enterprise hardware of any given brand that supports the tech, Cisco, Meraki, Ruckus, Aruba, whatever. You have to go directly through the program called Helium Plus, where it's a KYC sort of program, and you work directly with them. I would assume, I don't know, but provided a different set of essentially onboarding credentials for the network is what I'm hearing. And they work with you. And I would assume with that gives them some ability to maintain that quality assurance aspect of, because these data only, the commodity hardware essentially is what it is. They don't have the ability to do a lot of those internal checks with the Helium mobile software that they have on the Helium hotspots. So they have to have some sort of ability to make sure that these locations are correct, that they're being deployed properly, with who they're working with is professional. And you have to wonder what those deals entail, if they're necessarily part of the crypto ecosystem, because I've not gotten a lot of clarity on that. But I would say the hardware that they're reselling is, once again, kind of shitty. Let's be real.
But it earns
great.
I was going to say two things.
If you want the proof of coverage earnings, you got to buy the helium hotspot. Sorry.
No. I was going to say that somewhat orthogonally that I think that the brownfield conversion, sort of the Wi-Fi conversion thing, is going to be the biggest catalyst for DUI, way over and above the individual deployments. I could be wrong on that, but that's just my opinion. But I think the most interesting thing out of this partnership announcement from Helium wasn't the partnership itself. We all know that they're probably trying to get these kind of deals online, but it's the fact that they're going to actually sell the hardware directly through the stores, which to me was not something I was anticipating. I sort of figured it would be, we're going to use the network, and Helium's going to continue to try to promote people buying the hardware. But the fact that the retail stores and their online store is going to sell hardware to users directly, to me was just an interesting new angle that it wasn't on my my calendar for things to happen this year. So I feel like it almost reinforces what Telefonica's branded MNO or kind of preferred mobile carrier, how they see the opportunity with this. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that, but
no, that's an interesting take. That's I don't know. I'm just happy that I'm earning H&T again.
Me too.
Dude. Absolutely. I'm tired of IoT.
Yeah.
I said this in the last stream, but under IoT, I only had 2 Helium hotspots online, and now that they switched back to Helium, for some reason, a third hotspot is now working. So I didn't do anything. I haven't touched it in over a year and a half, and all of a sudden now it's earning. So something was broken there.
Like kind of brings you back to the good old days.
One of the things I kind of want to point out here at what Tyler said about brownfield conversions. I'm of much of the same opinion, but like the comment I made earlier, when it comes to brownfield conversions, like you're talking about working with structured businesses, many who are adverse to working with cryptocurrency, particularly if it's not a stable coin, and one that's currently facing litigation from the FCC and does not particularly have a good past when it comes to media coverage. Now, all that aside, look, you have to wonder like how the burn mint sort of equilibrium is in effect when you're going directly through Helium Plus. That's something I'm not entirely sure of, and I should probably try to pry more information from. But most companies don't want to be paid out in fiat. In crypto, they prefer fiat. Of course, there is a third-party solution to this for people who want to deploy independently, can do that conversion for these businesses and act as a middleman. Then you have companies like Wayfi, right? Wayfi, not to be confused with the crypto project Wayru. Wayfi is Russ and Simon, who work with the majority of these projects and other marketplaces for carrier offload type of partnership and traffic direction. So you can get many businesses, large scale businesses, onboarded through Wayfi, and they can choose who they point to get those earning payouts and convert that crypto pay directly to that business. And it's really just transparent from the perspective of the business. I shouldn't say transparent. It's I guess it's just easy onboarding. It's a managed service through a company who has faces and names that you interact with on a professional business level that are also long-time professionals in the field. So that does certainly help when it comes to some of this data transfer we're talking about, and the flywheel or use. Right now, the thing I'm also hearing is there's numerous projects doing this, as we've aforementioned. Wayru, there's, like I said, not to be confused with Wayfi, what we just spoke about, but Wayru, Carrier One, XNet, Helium Mobile. potentially others like Chirp, and there's Meta Blocks, and there's quite a few that doesn't also include these other ones such as Ameriband. You have Google Orion. There's companies that partner directly with the cellular carriers, etc. And there's still a limited budget to how much they can actually do this, and where it makes sense to do so to pay for that offloaded data. That being said, this is not going to be the endless gravy train, the endless easy cash cow. I suspect that there is going to be, some tightening of operations and restrictions within the future when it comes to approval of locations, when it comes to the amount that's being paid out per gigabyte offloaded, and who they're going to participate with on this level. And I would bet, I wouldn't for certain, but some of these projects are, of course, there's always people trying to set this up in residential areas and game the system, and it's problematic. Although there's anti-gamification mechanisms in play from the carrier perspective to keep this from being abused, it still doesn't look good for these companies that are for these crypto projects when their deployers, their community is making just piss poor attempts at installation locations or gaming the system. And there also has to be a level of need in that area when it comes to, it's either underserved by when it comes to cellular coverage, or it's extremely congested and makes it worthwhile for the company to pay for that data that's offloaded. So there could be some tough times ahead for all of these projects at some point.
And something you did mention earlier, there is the SEC situation there that's hanging over the project right now. That said, we did get some news this week that Coinbase it looks like the SEC is basically dropping that whole situation. So, if the helium situation clears up, I think that could be a positive catalyst for all of DePIN. Actually, to be some positive news around it as well.
Let me elaborate on that lawsuit there. I'm not saying that helium is innocent or guilty. You can make that decision yourself when it comes to helium, and just take into consideration that was dropped at the last minute by the Biden administration on their way out the door. And in my opinion, it was you don't do that when there's a new administration inbound unless you check with them. And that was the exact opposite in every single scenario across the board when it came to turnover. The peaceful transition of power between parties was not necessarily friendly. So and how many lawsuits did we see come out of that administration that just made little sense, that seemed like it put everything with Trump aside?
Yeah.
That just seemed like they were for political, persecution, for lack of a better word, or just for the political agenda rather than application of the law.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like they were going after utility projects, and there's a lot of bad actors they could have been going after that they didn't. But I don't know.
What did you guys think about their new free plan release outside of the kind of the carrier offload stuff? Did you guys have any thoughts on that strategy for increasing their subscriber count?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And a lot of phones now are dual eSIM compatible, so you can put it on your phone and have an extra cell line. I have Helium Mobile, but I have a paid plan, and I like the fact that if I'm in a dead zone for my traditional carrier, which ironically is T-Mobile, so I have two T-Mobile lines, but sometimes the Helium Mobile line or the T-Mobile line, like, they get different reception. And I think as we are going into, always having to be connected just as a society, I think having multiple lines, as of right now, is like the solution until maybe these companies finally figure out how to get coverage across the whole country and the world, because there's still dead spots. But like I go into New York City, I take the train in, I have to go into the tunnels underwater, and people on Verizon have service that entire time. I have T-Mobile, I don't have service. You're literally underwater. It doesn't make sense, but there's
Chris,
free plans.
Yeah, so the free plan, by the way, is 3 gigabytes, and then you have 300 texts, 100 minutes. Then you have the $15 plan, 10 gigabytes, and then unlimited text and calls. And then you have the unlimited plan for $30. So that's what we're talking about. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Joe.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, Chris, it's funny you mentioned Verizon and how people who have that don't experience those same problems. Verizon is the only one currently who's still holding out on doing any sort of Wi-Fi offload partnerships, as far as I know. And they have probably the best network. I mean, you can debate, but that's kind of what everyone suspects now. As far as like the free plans, and there's a limit on that, they cap you pretty hard, but it's nice for emergency situations or for in the case that you need, a backup because there's a certain carrier lacks coverage in another area. But it also begs the question. So there is, I guess I'll explain kind of how this whole reseller model works. With really any ISP, this is also done when it comes to actually physical fiber handoffs or the business level coax handoffs, etc. Or however I shouldn't say coax, like when they run coax into the building for a business internet, however you get it. So if there's smaller businesses that aren't willing to necessarily pay as much and don't have higher demands when it comes to internet, but there's still a piece of that target addressable market. So in many cases, the smaller ISPs will rely on the bigger ISPs to get that last mile, to get that fiber connectivity, to get that internet connectivity. Then they place their hardware there and connect the customer. They manage that account, or they manage the customer's billing. They pay a percentage of that. They provide the technical support, etc. And that is essentially the same deal that's going on when it comes to Helium Mobile, or like Cricket is one of them, Ting's another, Patriot Mobile, where they sell the service, they resell the service at what seems to be extremely discounted. But what they're doing is paying a portion of it's either a percentage of their revenue from the subscribers, or they have a pre-agreed upon deal, and they're paying something to the larger carrier to resell access to their the towers, essentially their connection. However, they're severely throttling it, and like I think it's throttled after like 30 gigs, the regular Helium Mobile plan. Like you're not going to pull more than a megabyte up down per second when it comes to data, and they may also throttle other things as well. But when it comes to the free plan, it's even more restrictive. But it's great that it's there, and that it gives people the ability to use it when they need connectivity. But my question is, like, when some of these plans that are just so cheap, how is Helium remaining solvent? Like, how is this a long-term solution? What are their profit margins like? Like, what is this deal actually like? And is it, I can't put my head around it. A lot of people are asking that same question. And one of the things I suspect is that this could be they're offsetting it by having people install hotspots in their house. It was the same thing with CBRS. Maybe this is they're being charged by T-Mobile by the amount that is of usage from the aggregate of their customers, but I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. But you just have to wonder, like, how are they going to make money off of this long term?
Yeah.
I mean, a good comparison to the free plan would be like going to Best Buy or a local store and buying one of those very cheap phones with minutes on it. I think it's just another, a newer way to do it. I don't know. Because now you can get it on your phone. You don't have to buy a second phone, and you can get a second number, and you can have, actually, I don't know. Yeah, they should give you a number, right? But you have a certain amount of minutes. Yeah. So it's limited.
Yeah. I think the real like test of this is, and Simon said it, the free plan is trying to be a loss leader. Really, in my mind, like the most clear value that they're going to get from doing that is, or a strategic play for market share. It's definitely that as well. But there's like the, like the mapping data, which you're forced into, and you don't earn credits for that. And so I outside of trying to get adoption, which I think is probably number one, it's sort of like, does the value accrual come from this other data? And I don't know if there's enough value on the kind of that data collection side to offset what is probably costing them non-nominal amounts of money for servicing those customers. So it'll be interesting
for sure. All right, let's shift to Hive Mapper. We've had some people.
All right, I have a comment way up here. This is something I haven't seen. The B Wi-Fi. Do you remember that existing? Because it seems to have just been erased from the face of the earth, and now you can only buy the B Wi-Fi plus LTE. What's going on with the orders? I don't know. Did they make an announcement about it? Because I haven't been able to find anything.
I actually don't know. It seems like
what I would assume that happened,
or they just upgraded everybody.
I would assume what happened is they realized that it is much more cost friendly for them to manufacture one model across the board, where this, the little SIM insert slot that they're going to build in, if someone wants to pay $100 more to spin up a second or modified production line, is going to be not really ideal when it comes to cost. Like, just give everyone the same model, because if that's only going to cost you like an extra $10 per device, if even that, when you're mass manufacturing them. So I don't understand. Look, this is one of my biggest grievances with Hive Mapper. They've been down this road before. They've manufactured their own hardware, and how they are still fumbling some of these very easy concepts, in my opinion, or whatever. It should have been learned the first time around. I just can't wrap my head around it.
I just found some information. And this is the only place you're actually going to find it. I'm not sharing my screen. Okay. Ariel said last week, late February / early March for Wi-Fi models. Now, is that going to be on target? I don't know. They have literally never been on target before.
Hard to say.
Yeah. And if you go on their website.
So they do have Wi-Fi only models?
Apparently, but I don't think they're selling them anymore. I think they took them out, and now they're not. Because if you go on the shop, this is the only thing available, and it says they ship in Q2. I don't see that happening. I mean, they have to seriously ramp up production because they have a massive backlog of orders.
Well, do they? I mean, they are ramping. I don't know how many cancellations they had. I do know this much. I mean, I know that I've spoken to a handful of people that have received their shipments, and they seem to be very happy with the B. The thing I need to further understand, though, is, okay, how much data is being uploaded, and what do the plans look like? And I think it's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out, because these Bs do a lot more edge processing. That's part of the. That means that there's two reasons why that's important. Number one is this right here, that with the old model, they're uploading all of the imagery, and the AWS bill for processing all that was very expensive. So you can see massive improvements here. The other thing I'll say, though, is that by edge processing, that data is going to be usable a lot closer to the point of capture, which is really the whole differentiator for Hive Mapper. So from a use case and driving demand perspective, that's massive. So we'll have to wait and see what the cellular plans look like and if they can ramp up production. But they did announce a couple. I'm sure this shout out to Jesus on this one. He loves this partnership.
Oh yeah.
But they did announce a couple of partnerships. TomTom, they've been around for a while. I know their revenue has been dropping year over year, but and then Trimble. So
they had a bunch more. I don't know if you saw Ariel posted. There's a bunch of them blurred out that they're planning on announcing over the upcoming days.
Okay.
I assume they're going to get bigger and bigger.
Did you have any input from those you've spoken with on what the earnings are like with the bees?
So I can tell you this much. I don't think they've implemented yet the difference in earnings between the B and the old model. That's coming soon. The other part is they had that MIP that once the edge processing savings are there, they're going to pass on extra rewards because there's less AWS costs. But the people I've spoken to, it seems like they're getting much better rewards. And I think maybe it's just that functionally they're getting more data than what the old models are now. Because I have like dinosaurs out there right now that are, I can tell you my rewards have dropped significantly. Part of it's the MIPs they implemented earlier in the summer, which sucked. But
those were fun.
I don't know. Yeah, those were a lot of fun. Yeah. So
well, they work at night now, right? The new ones, I think they work 24/7. I saw.
Yeah, you're going to be able to map at night. So I don't know.
I have to wonder, like with LiDAR, I'm pretty sure that has to be outside the vehicle. So I would assume that it has to be outside the vehicle to map at night. But I don't know.
I don't think they have LiDAR, but I agree. I think it would have to be outside because it's you basically shoot out a laser and it's a return. And like the more sophisticated LiDAR systems have more lasers that go out and more returns. So I would think that the windshield would be an issue with that. I'm not positive there.
I guess they're going to start selling waterproof cases in 2027. That's when they'll come out. I remember people wanted to mount them on, and people were mounting them on their cars and stuff. And obviously Hive Mapper is not making dedicated cases for these things, but I mean, it's another way they could make money if they really wanted to, honestly. It's just, I think it also would be way easier to find a manufacturer to manufacture waterproof cases than manufacture these complex devices with all this hardware in them. So, well, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe there'll be some person on Etsy that will make some molds.
They've got to get some traction back though. I think cutting off production for so long, they lost a ton of traction. Obviously, the market conditions are down. I think if market conditions were better right now, we would have seen the price pump rather off this news of these partnerships right now. It's just the market sucks right now. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But you have to like the fact that they do have partnerships. They're real partnerships that are announced, and they are shipping product. I mean, those are certainly good things, but they've got some ground to make up because they've lost a lot of trust with the community. I don't think there's any question about that over the last 6 months to a year. So we'll see what happens.
I got the.
I'm seeing it says stereo depth sensors. I'm not certain if that's LiDAR or not.
I don't think so.
I would assume it's not. Then yeah, you might be right.
Yeah, I think it's the stereo depth.
We talked about their SIM card situation and what they're accepting. Because I don't know if we've ever talked about that, but it's on their website now.
Oh, well, let's dig in on that.
Yeah, let me share it real quick.
Yeah, let me unshare this real quick. There you go.
So, SIM card required for passive connectivity. Now we have a list of SIM cards available. So you can use Helium Mobile or T-Mobile, which I mean it's the same thing, honestly. Rogers.
Hey, zoom in a little bit on that, Chris.
I got you. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, obviously, I'm sure us being in the U.S., we haven't heard of Chunghwa Telecom, but we all know what Helium Mobile is and T-Mobile. So this is big. I mean, I still don't know how it's going to work.
That's good to know. Pro tip: T-Mobile Business Sims. You can get it as cheap as $10 a month. All right, that's not bad.
Well,
it has to be approved by, I believe, by the carrier for
T-Mobile's
using
listed.
Okay.
So it should be T-Mobile, because everyone wanted to use Helium Mobile.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's supporting another crypto project. Yeah. Cool. So is there a SIM card slot on the B? How is that? I'm not familiar with how that's going to work.
I haven't received mine yet, but yeah, there should be a SIM card spot on there.
Okay. I would assume there's more. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I've spoken to some people that received them. They said that they've been working like flawlessly, so that's obviously a good sign.
Yeah,
because that was always a concern.
Yeah, LTE micro SIM card, so there has to be a slot.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah, Simon said I know multiple people have done this plan.
So I'd assume there's.
How many? What did you say?
He said it. No, let's keep moving. He said, I know multiple people have done this already. $10 T-Mobile Sims is the way. So
okay, well there you go.
Interesting.
There you have it.
Confirmed.
Yeah, there's always a way to get it. I mean, legally. So you just got to find the right avenue. I'm curious. I mean, I know you guys don't have the B yet. Hopefully, they'll send some out for some of us to review. But there's got to be some more capabilities in this app. Because there's really, I mean, I haven't really seen any changes. But yeah, to be able to add the SIM card and everything, there's got to be some upgrades that we should be seeing.
Yeah. I mean, from a fleet management perspective, it'll make it so much easier though. Yeah,
dude. For any what do you do when you're
deployers?
You have a fleet? Yeah. This is going to be way easier. You're going to be able to get it in infinite cars. Like when I explain projects to people, don't understand what we understand on like how to monitor it, and a lot of these projects require a lot of technical knowledge just to get started and understand. Like you have to understand crypto in general to understand how to claim rewards and whatnot and send rewards from wallets, but you also just have to understand basic troubleshooting if the device goes down. And like if you're saying if the B is working as well as it is and it's all automated, I mean it's
game changer.
Yeah, it's game changer. And this isn't the first. I mean, this is, I would say, the second project, maybe third project. I would say Helium Demo and now HiveMapper that is hopefully going to be able to successfully make it automated because we don't have a lot, and it's going to keep going.
That's right, because the old way of having to like be connected, download imagery, upload imagery, like that's not sustainable through a bear market. There's no freaking way. So having it automated is the only way. You said here you need to have a business and business bank account. Yeah, I actually have a video that walks through all the steps I took to set up my LLCs in the US at least. So worth watching if you're a fleet manager and want to shorten your learning curve there a little bit. It's not super difficult to do. So, okay. So that's HiveMapper. I want to touch on XBits. Have you guys watched that video I put on XBits yet?
I haven't seen it now.
I've talked to you about it where you pretty much walked through the whole thing.
Dude. Okay. Let me share this. I think XBits is going to be a freaking monster project, y'all. I have to say, like they're flying under the radar a lot because they haven't. A lot of these GPU aggregators are really good at just marketing. They're not so great at following through on their claims. But I ran into them when I was in Austin, actually, at Consensus. So most GPU aggregators are, sourcing from gamers and from individuals with GPUs. This group is building out legitimate AI data centers. So they've constructed a team that has a lot of experience in the Web 2 space, and like they just brought on 4,000 H200s and they have the expertise to go in, build out data centers with over 1,000 in high-end NVIDIA GPUs. They know how to construct the GPUs with using the chips. They also know the power requirements, the cooling requirements, and like 90% of the revenue is coming from Web 2 customers. So they understand the security side of it too. But if you look, and they're bringing on the Blackwell clusters this year. But if you look at the projects, like all of the crypto projects, Aether, Ioneta, Cash, they're in talks with Render right now. They're all basically having to source GPUs from Xbits if they want to legitimately train models and inference LLMs. Like Xbits is the play when it comes to high-end AI compute. So they haven't launched their token yet, but they're going to be launching their token pretty soon. But dude, I think they're going to be good.
Yeah, I might have to get in on this one. This is what I've been preaching to a lot of the people who are the, AI enthusiasts of crypto who believe every project labeled AI who wants to do some sort of, decentralized compute and shoehorn AI into it. They believe that it's the next big thing. Well, there is very limited as to what you can do with a cluster if that cluster is not co-located all in a centralized location with high-speed connectivity in between each cluster. It's extremely limited.
Yep.
And the performance suffers greatly without that sort of infrastructure and really expertise building that. The amount that goes into the connectivity alone, there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down when it comes to AI networks that are built for AI connectivity, and it's more sophisticated, and I'd say probably more resource intensive than even some of the biggest data center built networks that are out there. Just a sheer amount of data that's moved and how fast it has to move at is incredible.
Yeah. And the power that's necessary to run these data centers is crazy. So I'm actually going to be bringing their CMO on for an interview the next week or two. They just raised in December $15 million on a $150 million valuation, and they hit $10 million in revenue in 2024. They're looking to do at least 5 times that this year. So that's going to be a big project, man. And again, a lot of these other decentralized GPU aggregators, they're very limited in the type of customer they can serve. Xbits looks like the real deal in what they're doing. So they haven't done a great job of marketing. They've been just building, which is not a bad thing, really. I'd rather have a team that's really building than a team that's marketing and all smoke and mirrors. So.
Hey, Simeon, really quick, can you send me a message about that T-Mobile business thing? Because the cheapest I can see is $30 a line. So I want to see about that $10 one.
What other projects we touch on here?
What you guys do?
There's so many projects. I mean,
GeoNet. GeoNet's crushing.
GeoNet is awesome.
Crushing it.
We've talked about it. We talked about it every week.
Yeah, we always talk about it, but it's like
they're always doing stuff. They
just are unbothered by the market conditions. I'll some of these days this month, I looked at my portfolio and everything's just getting destroyed. And GeoNet is just nah, we're gonna do our own thing. And to me, they're a really good example of what's possible if you really get the flywheel effect going. You have real revenue, real usage on your network, and how you can decouple to an extent from market conditions. But you look at the metrics right now, they're up to over 13,000 miners, over 142 different countries. You look at the revenue is just keeps going up every month. I think it's 50% of their base stations are getting daily usage. And then you look at the token burns, everything's very transparent. They're up to almost 11 million tokens burned. So that's 1.1% roughly of their total token supply burned forever. They're doing everything right. And Mike Horton's super smart. Like
I think there's one thing they usually what happens with a project around this time is they're going to change their logo. I just feel it. Like that's what happened with Demo, and now they're going crazy. Hive Mapper, I think they changed their logo to like this little bee thing. Yeah, but they're killing it. They're doing a really good job.
Yeah. So he said there's a short term in the short term it's bullish, long term very weary. As far as RTK technology, it says just how RTK works at various levels. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, so for people that are watching that don't know, RTK, real-time kinematics, essentially what they're doing is with these base stations getting very precise location data. So if you're connected to satellite systems like GPS, for example, you can get within a couple of meters of accuracy by using these base stations in conjunction. You get within 2 centimeter level accuracy. So for like agriculture, drone surveys, they're talking about self-driving vehicles, and eventually as you get AGI agents and start having robots, it's going to be really necessary for that too. So getting precise location data. Does anybody know about this project? Actually,
Deep.
I love Deep.
Real quick, I wanted to throw this in there, then we'll get to Deep, and then what the question in the chat from X Twitter, our X user there. But I want to throw this at you, Brad, because we've had these discussions in the past about Hive Mapper and Rover, which is a Hive Mapper competitor. They're actually using the GeoNet network for RTK and PPK. But I'm reading the specs of the Hive Mapper B, and it says GPS high precision dual band L1/L5 GNSS module with embedded security and RTK/PPK ready. Yeah. So sounds like RL is 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door when it comes to that subject matter. And maybe a hill that he has decided it's not worth dying on.
It's a good question. There's a little bit of background there between Mike Horton and Ariel. So anyway, I don't know. It seems like they could add RTK capabilities. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. It's that whole situation is just kind of weird in general. I hate to see like projects that are like beefing with each other. It's just like ridiculous. If teams are building, they should all be supporting each other. I don't understand the animosity, to be honest.
I mean, they use the Helium IoT network, and it can, the way they're using it, sure, you can use it as an anti-gamification mechanism, but how really valuable or useful is that in comparison to RTK and PPK data? Yeah. That's, what you can get from GeoNet. So, hey, whatever.
Agreed.
Just want to, poke that subject matter. Back to Deep.
Okay. Yeah. And then Rover, we can, there's a lot of people that are bullish on Rover. They are using LiDAR. My only concern really when it comes to Rover is, number one, it has to be on the outside of your vehicle in certain like city environments, like having to take that off every day because you're not going to leave it in your car if you're parking on the street, for one, but also the cost of the higher end module. So like,
you need to
how much coverage do they need? I mean, what market are they targeting, and do they need a high refresh rate, or is it okay if they just map it once every so often? Like getting a high level of participation when your hardware costs are really high can be difficult, but maybe there's a market there. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But there are people that really, really like Rover. So I'm certainly not funding that project. I think,
Yeah, I heard in my Discord that you need to have cell connection as well. So it just drains your battery, but it's similar to Sword Chain and projects like that. no one's going to want to do that long term. We use our data on our phone to stream music, to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever. Like, we're using our data for other stuff, and then to have to.
Are you talking about the
rover?
You talking about mapping with your phone camera with rover?
No, I'm just saying we use our phone we use our cellular data for other things that it requires. Well, now we have to use it for rover, so it's one of those things. I don't know.
I would argue, yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, but we're doing the same thing for Hive Mapper, right? And it's not so much that the amount of data that's used with rover is actually very minimal in contrast to even what Hive Mapper is at in the recent months. But the biggest drawback for me is having to mount my phone in the window every single time I do something when it comes to so like you need a secondary phone, you take it out, and I wish that they would manufacture a low end camera for but regardless, the light cone has advanced capabilities with and when it comes to imagery, LiDAR and RTK, PPK, all that built in. So I don't think that they really need the refresh of that type of data as often as what they're collecting with just GNSS puck and regular cellular mapping. But I mean, there's pros and cons to both.
That's good because we don't see that with all projects. All right,
so mine was no, just go ahead.
Oh no, were you gonna say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
My package, so it was sent to me, recommended me for the project, and mine was opened by customs on the way in and sealed again. So I think they're they're wondering what it was. For whatever reason, they felt it was shady, or something got me on some sort of list. So that made me wonder a little bit. But yeah, I like the team.
All right.
And did you guys see the question with mobile focused projects like Acura, Silencio, Nadix? And are there any that you recommend?
I know we talked about Silencio. I made a video on it, and I was bullish, and then I've kind of retracted my statement because it's one of those that the way I feel like it's being treated on X is like when I see the scam projects on X where they're like, oh, buy my token. It just it's flooded social media. It could be a good thing. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that data, noise data, I mean, what does it actually solve? Does anyone really care about it? I know we're in a world where data is everyone wants to know more stats. Like you watch NFL, they give you these random stats that you never knew you really cared about. And then the next game, you're like, oh, where's this stat? So maybe that's what they're trying to do. And they can partner with Google when you're searching a website or a business, a place of business, it'll tell you the noise level at a certain time. But I haven't looked at the other ones. I only really have experience with Silencio.
So Silencio had their token launch. Apparently, and I haven't looked super deep into this, but apparently there is a market for noise pollution data, and Europe is way ahead on this. But I guess when it comes to construction and stuff, they're finding that noise pollution can actually be really bad for your health. So I think there is a market, and probably a market that will grow. My question with Silencio has always been quality of data collection, because you have all these different cell phones. Some are going to collect better noise data than others. So, are they going to be able to, get bad data out? AI obviously is super helpful in going through large data sets, but that's always been my question.
And that's a very valid point. You hit it right on, Brad. But I have to say, I'm always skeptical of, AI is the magic silver bullet solution to all of the problems in all of DePIN when it comes with significant overhead, and it comes with a level of error and unpredictability when you're working with these models. I mean, the amount of data collection, training, data collection and storage and processing, that's a pretty big bill when you really consider it. Then you need the expertise to sort through that and go through manual checks. Well, build out that model and sort through, go through manual checks, etc. So, I kind of unconvinced on that.
Me too. I mean,
and
as
what
far as
data they have to collect to understand. Yeah.
As far as privacy concerns, I mean, I think most people probably have apps that are listening at this point. Like,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a valid concern.
But that's not, I don't think that's a good excuse for just giving everything the green light that you in crypto. They're already selling on us, so might as well sell it. I mean, I think that is kind of ridiculous, because many of these are for all the nefarious stuff that these big businesses do with our data. It can get a lot more sinister when it's targeted by and the group of participants is much less significant, and there's identities mapped to the participants. I mean, this is
for sure.
I think
there's some use cases
approach international.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there's limited use cases where you can sort of leverage the phone devices. Like, I think Wi-Fi map is a great example of sort of mapping, where there's connectivity or not. But I think across the board, it's difficult to get real quality out of a lot of the kind of the other stuff on the device. There's applications where this does work, but there's also applications where it doesn't. So I feel like the best approach in a lot of these models where they're trying to leverage the phone device in some capacity is like as a supplemental for other types of data that either maybe reassures what's coming out of more solidified sensors. But I think the scope of where you can just use a device is going to be more limited for sure.
Let's talk about DEEP, because a lot of people. I have a buddy, Daniel Young, who's like super bullish on this project. He sent me a couple messages about it, so I need to dig in. It seems like everyone's in favor of this project. I've watched a couple videos. Their team seems legit. What are you guys' thoughts on DEEP?
I haven't heard about it until just now, so
they're super legit.
Yeah, so the hardware overall that they're selling is pretty good. Now, it always goes back to that argument as to why do you need hardware sold by them to participate, and of course, it's comes down to the ability to access the system itself and attempt to gamify or do something nefarious. And I get it. So the hardware is good, and for this sort of decentralized model of general computer unit is really what it is. It's just another node with good specs. You always wonder if they're using your public IP address is what it is, your internet connection, and they need connectivity. What are they doing with it? Are they doing something that can cause issues for you personally, as in these decentralized VPN connections people use for illegal legal activities? Some of the web scraping stuff gets you rate limited severely by ISPs, etc. So they've not gone down that route. Those are what they're specifically trying to stay away from. Anything that could be harmful from a security or personal standpoint when it comes to your digital connectivity. There's projects that they partnered with to act as certain types of validator nodes or utility nodes for whatever it is that is needed within those projects' ecosystem. And I'm told that's where the revenue would come from. That's what the utilization of that processing power and bandwidth would be for. Of course, I encourage everyone to dig deep before you set anything up at all on your internet connection.
Yeah, my understanding is they've built quite a number of those security provisions in place. But the other thing that I really like about Deep, which is kind of back to these projects like DABA and whatnot, is that they already have an existing node hosting or node as a service company called NerdNode, and so this is going to allow them to really kind of take that to new heights. And so from a risk mitigation or demand validation standpoint, they have a lot of that already kind of pre-baked into what will be brought onto the DePIN network. So if you're looking to have some assurances there, I really appreciate the fact that that's a reality for them.
These are all the nodes on their device, from what I understand. It's a ton.
Yeah, if you go to NerdNode, that's they talk a little that you can see the services that they currently run. Excuse me, and I don't know if all of these are companies that they're hosting or sort of working with in some capacity, but I imagine a bulk of them are, because they've been kind of crushing it on the NerdNode side for quite some time.
Is their token launched?
No, they haven't done a token yet. They're going to be launching on Avalanche too. I've got an article that I've been working on for DePIN projects, or sort of the lack thereof in the Avalanche space, and so they're launching on Avalanche, but their token's not live yet.
Need Avalanche to do something this bull run.
People are making me worried about hosting one of these things. I might just buy the token.
They've got some good security provisions in place. I did an episode with them, by the way, Brad. I don't know if you saw it. I can shoot it your way, where they go into depth on what they've brought, and they specifically talked about the fact that like a lot of these, that is a real concern, that you can have anybody kind of come on and all of a sudden you're like a co-conspirator, you're sort of looped into things like CP. Like a lot of the problems that you get from these distributed systems, they've specifically kind of worked to prevent.
Fair enough. Yeah, shoot that to me, man.
Russ here, Mr. Wi-Fi, he makes a good point, and this is the approach he's taken with his threefold farm, which is a decentralized compute project. You get a separate line that is a business line, dedicated static internet, dedicated static IP addresses, and this should be under a business of your creation, of under an entity. So if and when there is some sort of legal inquiry, you actually have some sort of separation and can provide legitimate, deniability to your involvement on whatever took place, or have some sort of explanation that holds up. You never know. I mean, I understand that you're going to get people in here who want to cite different laws and regulations and FCC standards and whatever. But what it comes down to is that if a law enforcement agency comes knocking and they don't follow protocol, well, it's going to be very hard to get out of it regardless, unless you have a lawyer on retention who understands, how to counter such, counter some sort of investigation that, was done against procedures within the cyber landscape. You get what I'm saying? Like, just because there's laws put in place to protect so-and-so, whether it's you, the ISP, whoever, from something that has taken place illegally on your internet connection without your knowing, without your consent, doesn't mean that it's, always going to work out in your benefit. Especially if you live in a country that law enforcement plays fast and loose with the rules. So it bugs me so much when I hear these people in the Discords and the Twitter comments who, oh, you're just flooding everything, and they're cybersecurity and legal experts on all of the above, and they've been in the crypto space for a week.
Yeah, these are valid concerns for sure. Oh, he said something about threefold.
Oh man, I actually
Actually have some
think of a
340s.
different company. It's funny. I just no, you go, Joe. You had something to say.
So it's not just limited to threefold. Mysterium had the same problem where people were getting knocks at their door for people using it for illegal purposes. And even if it's not something that's per se a sentencing offense of going to jail or going to prison and being dragged in front of the courts, there are ISPs, especially in Germany in particular, is why I hear this happening. If something such as torrenting movies or music that cause a copyright violation is done behind your IP address, you get a fine that's like $800. So,
Wow.
how are you going to deal with that? I mean, you're going to end up paying it. Are you going to say, "Oh yeah, I've been reselling your service against a clause"? Okay, here's another fine for you, wise guy.
I haven't seen a torrenting fine in years. They don't seem to really care about them. I mean, I haven't seen it.
What for? Well, don't admit to
No,
you breaking the law.
no.
Still, in the
Yeah,
United States, it's not always like you don't always get fined for it, but working at the company I work for, we have a bunch of locations which have guest room access at hotels, and people will download movies and crap over the connections, and the ISPs, they understand that it's a reseller circuit, so they don't disconnect it, but they will say like, knock it off, or you face a potential fine and disconnection. Now, whether they'll do that to another business or not, or just, they might send like a cease and desist letter to our legal team, and our legal team will, take it very seriously, but we've had to deal with that before. So it's not like this is something that doesn't happen.
What do you guys think about Wingbits?
Going to space.
Yeah, I was gonna say, very interesting. They're launching a satellite. That news came out this week. So, their network is collecting ADS-B data from aircrafts, basically. So, they're launching a satellite, I guess, to validate the data. So to minimize spoofing.
That's legit. That's a very expensive, expensive idea. So
yeah.
That's so cool. It's launching on the SpaceX mission too. It's like everything ties together.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So yeah, Wingbits, they haven't launched their token yet, but certainly an interesting project. They have a dual miner with GeoNet. So I'm be on the lookout for that.
We should start like I don't know what your guys' financial situation, but I feel like I should start a GoFundMe so I can buy all these freaking projects. There's so many of them.
I know.
I actually ordered one of the dual miners, but I haven't got it yet. I think they said that they'd start shipping end of the month, so hopefully that happens soon.
Yeah, I know they had some delays. They had like a spaces where Mike Horton came on and explained what was happening, but I think they worked through it. What about Arweave? Anybody bullish on Arweave in here?
Yeah, you got me to buy it. And then the token crashed.
Not financial advice. Not financial advice.
No, but I like the AO. Yeah, geez, dude, I don't want to look at that chart. Get it away.
So Arweave permanent storage. They just continue to see. They're doing over 1 billion transactions a month now. And then AO is a supercomputer that has been built on top of Arweave. So right now, let's see, it's sitting around like $34 right now. So I put a video out on how to purchase the token, but I don't know. I'm very bullish on the Arweave ecosystem. So I would recommend at least taking a look at it. There's some good videos out there explaining what they're doing, but it's a pretty cool project, and they're getting a lot of usage.
Yeah, I think we pretty much cover all of them. All the good ones.
People hurting who jumped into Peak. Yeah, I don't personally own any Peak. I think it's a cool concept. Tyler, you've spoken with their team, right? peak?
We spoke a while ago, but yeah, I did chat with him. This was probably 6 months or 9 months before their TGE.
Mm-hmm. So they're like what DePIN specific blockchain that helps projects kind of get things rolling that are starting up. So I think it's an interesting concept. Dynex, what are you guys' thoughts on Dynex? I know there's a lot of mixed feelings on Dynex. Obviously, they've taken a beating, but it does seem like they've got a couple of AI agents running on their platform now. They just got pre-approved to become a member of the European Quantum Industry Consortium, and you look at the jobs that are being completed. 108,000 compute jobs this month. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on Dynex, Joe?
I like it. I like the people involved with it. I know a couple of them. The only grievance there is really, one time when I was out on a work trip, their rep came to stay with me at the hotel I was at, and one day he pissed out the window. No joke.
No way.
Yeah.
I'm sure I know who you're talking about then.
After the fact, it was funny, but I was
mortified,
not too happy there. But no, they're a good team. I was a little bit concerned that it was a work trip, so that could have got me into some a little bit of trouble there, but it's all right. No, they're good. I'm actually in their Discord. I talk to them periodically. I mean, it's again one of the decentralized compute type of deals that they are trying to execute. I see their efforts and
Sure.
what they're doing, and get to hear some of the chats and stories that they have in the Discord with many people who are involved in it. But it's just going back to my overall viewpoint on anything sort of decentralized compute, where you're going to have limitations with what exactly you can do.
Sure. Any other projects? We covered a lot, and we're coming up on like we're over 2.5 hours now. Yeah. So, we'll probably try to close out here in a minute. But anything else you guys want to discuss before we cut out?
I think we got a lot of the highlights in, to say the least.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. That's been fun, guys.
Yeah.
So it's good to have you back, Joe.
Hey, I'll come and make a guest appearance occasionally. I just didn't want to keep doing the whole YouTube thing. Occupied too much time. There's a lot of agitation came out of it, and been let down too many times to continue to be involved to that extent and put my face in front of other projects and speak to it. I'm still participating, and I still love coming on and discussing with you guys, and I know there's a lot of people who like to hear what we all have to say, but a lot of people who like to live stream, so I like to hang out once in a while and get some of my thoughts out there. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
For sure. And again, we're going to start doing a weekly Spaces. I know Tyler's planning on being a part of that. I think Chris is as well. So that's super exciting. There's plenty to talk about, obviously. So we'll probably run like an hour or so on those, and open the door for people to ask questions and stuff. So that'll be super exciting. I don't know if we're going to do it this week with ETH Denver going on right now, but if not this week, we'll probably start that the next week. So that'll be exciting. Other than that, man, like I appreciate everyone being in here and asking questions. A lot of interaction in this space or in this live stream is awesome. Tyler, Chris, any final thoughts before we cut out here?
No, I'm just gonna say thanks for having me on. This was a super fun chat. I get to cover a ton of topics, and the worst and best part about DePIN is that there's so much happening that staying on top of it is it's a lot of work. So I'm glad we got to cover it for people to stay up to date. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, if we're being honest. So just thanks again for having me.
Heck yeah, man. No, thanks for coming on. This has been awesome. Chris, anything, or you good?
There's so many projects I got to look into now. Yeah. So I really appreciated all the people that were interacting in the comments. It was like the most interaction we've gotten in a while. So it was nice. Kept the conversation flowing, and looking forward to continue doing these.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, thanks, y'all. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Peace.